Hello, hello, Amy.
Hello, hello.
We're just waiting a few minutes for everyone to sign in.
Okay.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another Growing Beyond Earth webinar. For those of you tuning in, this is the 5th webinar for this year's series. And today we're primarily going to be focusing in on how to submit your projects on Make Projects and provide you a few examples of templates that you can use for your presentations. So if you have any questions about the Growing Beyond Earth challenge, if this is your first webinar, you can still participate. You'll see the presentation requirements, but more information on the actual challenge itself is on the website. You can go to makeprojects.com/growingbeyondearth, and we'll have our email provided at the end of the session as well, so you can forward your questions to us if you have more in-depth questions about the actual challenge itself. But for those of you who are back again, welcome. We hope that all of your projects have been going really well. And today we want to run you through a few templates of how to submit, and then show you on the back end with Make Projects how to replace the information that's there with your own information. So this is all in preparation for two things. There's a submission through Make Projects due on April 14th. And there will be live presentations that you'll be making to a panel of judges, including botanists and scientists from NASA. And so this is basically preparing you for success in both of those submissions. So what you see on the screen here is essentially a Google Slides template that we'll email to everyone at the end of this seminar. And this is something that can be useful for your submission on Make Projects, but also putting this into a layout that can be then presented virtually in the presentation portion of the submission. So a standard entry with your image at the top, your team name. If you're representing a specific school or company or organization, you can list that on the bottom as well. We would love to see, each contributor. I know that sometimes when you're making the submission, it's under a specific account on Make Projects, but we'd like you to recognize everyone that's participating in the project. And if you can give the emails or contact information for each of those team members on this slide, that would be great. Even if not every single team member is able to participate in the live presentation, it's great to have this available to see what the full team behind the project is. And this slide, you can add not only your finished images of the project, but we'd like to see the thinking behind your work. So I think a lot of people leave out some of the original ideation sketches or diagrams or notes written in the early stages of their projects. But it would be great to share that in your presentation. So any of those random images that you might think that you have scattered around, scan those or photograph those and include those in your presentation. They're extremely useful to understanding your approach to design. And a small brief paragraph about how your project was conceived and how the specific elements you've designed into your project, how they specifically address the challenges for this year's challenge. And then once we get to the design portion, then you can include either more technical drawings. These could be screenshots from a CAD or CAM software, or they can be actual images of a prototype model that you created. And this is really important, the materials list. If you can include a full list of materials, including links to things that you might have purchased online or where to get them, these are all considerations into the final project. So how viable it is based on the full budget, full list of materials that were used for the project. So here you can include that list on the side, on the white side, or you can even have images of the different parts and pieces disassembled here. So the renderings are really important. If you don't have a fully built model yet, you can include screenshots of a digital 3D model, or even if you're working with electronic components, there are softwares that virtualize the way that these components connect together, so you can have screenshots of those as well. So, heavily rely on the visual aspect of this being a presentation. So including images or renderings of the actual diagram of your circuitry or designed volume. And so once you have this, this is essentially good for both your make project submission and your presentation, your live presentation over Zoom. So I'm going to share the screen on the make project side now. So when you first get onto the make projects page, you see all the information about the challenge on the page. You scroll all the way to the bottom. There's 3 buttons at the very bottom of the page. And it's very important that you select the specific team that you're representing. So if you're a high school team, click the button that says high school, collegiate team, or professional. So this will actually automatically open up a new page where if you aren't enrolled in Make Projects yet, you'll create a free account, and then it'll open up the appropriate tab where it says Growing Beyond Earth Maker Contest, Year 2, high school entry, or collegiate entry, or professional entry. So you can replace, so when you go to, you'll open up this screen, you can click on this edit button at the very top, and we'd like you to leave this last portion, either high school entry, professional entry, or collegiate entry. Then you can replace this first part with whatever you'd like to name your project. So if you're at a loss for interesting names, you can take a look at the submissions from last year. We had teams coming up with some amazing names for their projects, like Gaia Project and Seed with multiple E's. So you can feel free to be creative with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be super descriptive on your project. And then this description here currently has the information about the challenge, but you're free to completely erase that entire paragraph and put an overall description of your specific project. And this is where the descriptors of your approach can be included. And then you'll notice here on the left, the replace me image. This is where you would put a full view of the entire project. So if it's digital, zoom out so that you can see the entire piece and upload that image, or if it's a physical mock-up prototype, you can take a picture of that as well. Now for detail shots, that's where you would go to the sections below. Here you can actually add new sections, but we have pre-loaded 3 specific windows for you to upload information to. Again, you can include more than this, but this is a baseline. So this first box, materials, tools, and technologies, this is where you would upload that same slide of the materials list. And so if you click there, you can actually replace that image with the image that you have of all your materials, and then change this text to then list out all the materials with the links of where you got them. And you'll notice that here there's a ton of different options for what you can upload to make projects. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a photo, it could be a video. You can also upload specific links separately. If you have a file like the presentation file that we had just shown you, you can save that as a PDF and upload that file. It even has a whiteboard capability. So if you click on that, you can quickly draw some sketches to describe a specific aspect of your project. And then if you actually would like some community feedback, you can throw a poll up on your materials submissions and get people to respond with maybe finding other alternatives to the ones that you've listed that might be more cost effective or more efficient. So this is the power of this platform, is that it can be very collaborative as well, outside of even your own team or organization. So for the files tab, again, replace that image with some more information about your project. But in the files tab, the most important thing that we'd like to see is if you have a 3D file, upload that actual design file here. If you're working on Arduino code or any other kind of programming language, you can upload that as well. If you feel more comfortable with GitHub, you can include a link instead to a GitHub page with the entire repository for your project, if that's something that you're familiar with. And then the build process, this is where you would include those earlier slides that we had shown you, where you would actually show your team building the project or pieces of the project, early initial sketches. And you can see here, not only can you upload one image, but you can upload multiple images. So if you have photographs of the process and then technical drawings that show how it's assembled or how it comes together. So this is where you would upload all of that information. And again, you replace this image with you can either remove it or just click edit and upload your own files. And then you can change the text as well below. And again, if you want to add more information after that, you can click on new section and it'll allow you to select the style of section that you're creating and add that to your project as well. There isn't any limit on the amount of information that you can put on this. Now, once all this is uploaded, it goes live and there will be a make projects page here where it shows contests. And all these will populate in the public forum. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So right now, since the final date hasn't passed, it's still put on pause. So these projects will appear after the submission deadline. So after April 14th, your submissions will then go live on the following tabs. And so it'll be open to the entire community, the entire maker community. And we encourage you to not just submit the project and let it go. Once it's live on the platform, you might be getting questions from potential judges or just members of the community who are interested in your projects and want to learn more. So feel free to jump into the platform and basically answer those questions or interact with other people who are interested in the project. You might spark some inspiration in another project. So that's all on our end for the logistics of the submissions. If anyone has any questions, I see we have another 15 minutes for questions. If you have any questions about the submissions, you can put them in the chat, or just raise your hand and we'll add you to the panelists so you can ask your question live. You can also ask questions that are related to the project itself. So if you have any botany related questions, we have Amy from Fairchild today that can answer those questions. So we have a question about where can we find this recording. We can send out a link through the emails that if you've submitted for this webinar, that means that we have your email. So we'll send out a link to the recording of the webinar. So, and then also shortly before the final submissions are due, you'll receive an email with information on filling out a form where you actually submit to apply for the presentation live. And so that's happening during an event called Miami Make Week. And it will be the culminating event of all the presentations. And we'll have all the judges from both Fairchild and NASA present listening to your presentations. So it's important that you keep an eye out for that email and make sure that it's a separate registration to present your projects on that date. All right, so we have a question from Sarah Humphrey. What should we expect for the phase 1 presentation? How long should we expect to present? So the submissions can be as long as you like on the Make platform, but for the live in-person ones, you can go anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes just for your presentation. Anything longer than that, we would like to have it trimmed down. And that's why we'll upload the ability for you to send in those presentations beforehand. And we'll alert you if we think it might be too long for the presentation, or on the day of, we'll just basically expedite you or basically pause the presentation so that we can take questions and answers from the panel of judges. So if we're thinking 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how fast you go through your slides, different people present in different ways, 10 to 30 slides, basically, if you're doing a slide a minute, keep it on the 10 side. If you're doing, rapid fire images on your slides, then you can push it to the 30 slide limit, but I wouldn't go any more than 30 slides, if that helps answer your question. Does anybody have any other questions about either submitting or botany related questions for your projects? Nope. Oh, okay. I see submissions here. All right, so we have a question from Patrick Gratin. Does a fully autonomous system also include autonomous harvesting and planting? So thankfully, you are touching upon another year's challenge. So this year is specifically using electronic systems and sensors for maintaining plant growth. The harvesting and planting is actually year 3. And that's where some of the robotics are going to kick in. So Patrick, if you have that already, you're ahead by a year. But if not, don't worry about it. Just focus on the maintenance part. So assuming that an astronaut plants the plants and then the systems take over for all of the nutrient delivery, and then tweaking the lighting and watering and all of that over that period of time until it's harvested. So the harvesting and the planting would still be manual in this case. So we have a question from Michael Hoopman. Can Amy talk about any concerns she might have? Michael, would you like to elaborate on that question?
Yeah, Michael, it'd be helpful to know, I have lots of concerns, but specifically about this. Also, Carl is on as well. He's in the audience as well, so he can be able to help if there are plant concerns.
So in the meantime, Michael, oh, there we go. Does she have observations about what might be overlooked? So Amy, I guess, based on what we saw last year with the submissions from last year, do you have any kind of predictions on things that might be overlooked by teams?
No, not specifically. Maybe Carl does. I think the level of creativity that we've seen last year and this year so far always blows my mind. The thinking of things that I haven't even thought of, but I think Carl might. Carl, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I always think it's helpful to really think about the plants. It's so easy to get caught up in the building and the technology and everything, and then save the plant part of it till the last part. And you just always have to be thinking about the conditions that the plants need from the beginning to the end. That's all I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. So we have two other questions here. And I think they're kind of related. Sarah Humphrey's asking about how long will the winning teams have to build and test their prototypes for phase 2? And then Jack is asking, will there be an Excel submission of observed growth? So the Excel submission is actually part of phase 2. So if you're selected as one of the 5 finalists from each track, you will be provided with an Excel template that you would be inputting the observable growth data into. And so Sarah, from the time of the presentations in mid-April until July, when the non-con presentations occur, it's roughly about 2 months for that phase 2 portion. All right, we have one more question. Will designs oriented towards mitigating only partial gravity problems be judged differently than designs looking to tackle microgravity issues? Amy or Carl, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, so it's always good to be looking at the microgravity issues, because that's kind of top of mind. We're mostly thinking about implementing some of these technologies on spacecraft in a microgravity environment. But specifically, we haven't strictly asked for those kinds of things for this challenge. This challenge is really about seeing how to take care of the plants. And the idea is to have a system that can take care of the plants without human intervention.
Right. Okay, so we have about 5 more minutes. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A or in the chat section. So we have a comment from Michael asking about gardening, library, and resources from Fairchild. Amy, would you like to talk a little bit about what's on the Fairchild website that is available to people?
Sorry, I was muted there for a second. I'm not like, are these resources that would be for growing these particular plants? Then we would need to probably, I mean, I think we put some resources up, didn't we?
Yeah.
There are some resources, some previous studies from NASA, some previous studies about the plants that we're suggesting growing. Those resources are available on there. If there are other things, we can try to help you out with those. Carl, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, I don't think we have anything specific, any other resources than what we've provided. But we're going to be answering questions periodically. So
Right.
feel free to
So if there are specific questions, yeah, feel free to drop us a line.
So Michael, you should be able to find some links on the Growing Beyond Earth tab in the Fairchild website. But if there's specific questions that you might have, feel free to email us, and we might be able to pull some of the data from either the Fairchild Challenge or the Growing Beyond Earth Challenge that might answer those questions.
For sure.
All right, and then we have a question about the official contest email again. If you have any questions that you want to submit after this webinar, it would be innovationstudio@fairchildgarden.org, and we will include that in the chat so you can just copy and paste it. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining in for this last webinar before the submissions next month. Again, if you have any questions about either the submissions or your actual projects, you can email those to innovationstudio@fairchildgarden.org, and we'll have the appropriate information reached out to you based on what your inquiry is. So thank you again for taking the time out and for participating in this challenge. And we're really excited to see all your submissions next month. Have a good night.